Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Vashti Sarah, and you are tuned into another episode of All the Things where we literally talk about all the things. So, this week's episode, we will be touching on the topic of anxiety and stress management, and our guest is Jessica Bearden. She is an LPC, very qualified in this topic, and she'll be sharing about anxiety and stress, what it is, cognitive behavior therapy, lifestyle and stress reduction, treatment and coping strategies. What does the Bible say? Does it have anything to say about stress management and anxiety? And should Christians be struggling with this? And we'll conclude with different tools that you can use to help with this and advice from an LPC how to manage stress and anxiety. So I hope you guys enjoy this week's episode. Share it with a friend who you know will need it. And yeah, let's just get right into it. All right. So like I said in the intro of this video, my guest today is Jessica Bearden. She is qualified. She has the experience. And, we're just going to jump right into today's topic. We're going to talk about anxiety, about stress management, what that entails, the biblical aspect behind it. Should Christians even be struggling with this? Should this even be a part of our life? So before we jump into the topic, Jessica, first of all, thank you so much for saying yes, for carving out time in your day for me. And just tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, your degrees, where you went to school, your family life. Let the listeners know who you are.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be chatting about such an important topic. Like Vashti said, I'm a qualified in terms of I got my license to be a licensed professional counselor. I got that in 2021. So I've been working licensed for, I guess that almost 3 years, maybe. I can't remember which month exactly. But as far as schooling for my undergrad, it was a small private Christian university. And then for my graduate, I went to a secular state university. So I feel like I got kind of the best of both worlds in preparing me for this career. And I'm just so excited to be here, but almost I feel like more so than identifying as a counselor, I feel like I'm like a wife, Christ follower, a twin mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all the things. I have more than just twins, but that kind of is the fun fact of the day. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay. And I'm assuming you enjoy your field.
I love it so much. And just where I live in the Houston area, the networking here among counselors. I just came from lunch with a group of counselors. They're just so sweet and so fun to connect with and consult with. It's a great field, a helping profession. It's a really rewarding field too.
And what caused you to join this field?
Honestly, I just had to sit and pick a major. I had been bouncing around majors for maybe 2 years, and I had an honest conversation with a good friend who kind of snapped me out of my funk and was like, when do you feel most alive? And that was, my answer to that was when I'm just sitting and listening to people and helping them and guiding and validating their experiences. That really made me feel most alive. So it almost made sense to just go in this direction to learn more about it so I could professionally help people in this way instead of just personally.
Yeah.
And of course, I do believe it was a calling from God, just lining up the steps for me to be in this profession.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's just jump right into it. How to understand anxiety and stress? What's the psychological aspect of these emotions and how can they impact our lives? I mean, I know a lot of people struggle with anxiety and stress. So if you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I guess in a way we can just talk about what the symptoms of anxiety would look like. They're going to be, anxiety is interesting because it's just as much carried in our body as it is psychological. So probably the most obvious thing when we think about anxiety is worry and stress and fear, right? Yep. And so if you have diagnosed clinical anxiety, that means that the worry, stress, and fear is a little bit more difficult to manage. It's a little more intrusive. And then the physiological aspect of that is the way it's being carried in our body. Mm-hmm. So any sensation you have in your body related to the stress or fear or worry, like your heart beating really fast, really muscle tension, difficulty breathing. Like I feel anxious right now, and so it's hard to talk, right? Just being mindful of the way that anxiety is carried in your body, and it looks different for different people. Some people sweat, they get shaky, they get tightness in their muscles, heart beats really, really fast. Fatigue is a big one. But the psychological aspect is going to be, it's hard to make decisions, maybe ruminating over certain thoughts over and over again, almost like consumed by worries. And we can get more into it later, but basically anxiety takes reality and just twists it a little bit, and then makes you think that that is reality.
Yeah. And is it something that we can control, or is it uncontrollable? The sweating and the shaking and, the feelings that we have on the external.
The physical symptoms of anxiety, I would say those are going to be more difficult to quote unquote control, mainly because a lot of those is your body's natural response to protect you.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing to be thankful for. And I think that's almost a key that I really work on with clients is how can we be thankful for our body that is doing these things out of whack and we hate it. We don't want to feel this way, but how can we honor the way our body is carrying these emotions and calm our body to remind it, okay, we're safe right now. The anxiety is making us look at reality in a little bit of a twisted way. And that's once we can recognize that and calm our body, then we can get a little bit more control over those physical symptoms. But I think the automatic response, I don't really necessarily think that's in our control, because again, that's your body's natural survival instincts picking up its speed to self-protect when it feels threatened, even if that threat is perceived.
Yeah. Okay. And what about stress? How is that linked to anxiety? And is it linked at all, or is it just a part of human nature and it's something that we have to control or learn to deal with?
Stress is a normal and necessary emotion or experience. So we can't just dog completely on stress, right? No one likes to be stressed out. But our emotions, even stress, even the other uncomfortable ones, they're in essence, they're a gift. They're a gift from God to help us perceive the world around us and to help us problem solve and to move forward, to work through those emotions, to solve the issues where those emotions are coming from. But where stress can get a little bit more intrusive, or if our body is still carrying the same effects of stress, even after the stressor is long gone, that's when there's going to be more of a problem. So if you're stressed out, I would say, welcome to being a human. That's normal. That's okay. I'm glad you're stressed. That means you have worthy things to be problem solving about. You should want to have a little bit of stress in your life because it means there's things going on, right? Like you have kids. That's a great thing to quote unquote be stressed about. But if we're having a more difficult time noticing the stressors, working through them, being able to be calm and kind of recalibrate after the stressor is long gone, that's going to be where anxiety comes into play. So stress and anxiety are super linked. And they can kind of feel the same at times. What the difference is going to be the lingering effect or the more intrusive effect of stress.
Okay. So how does chronic stress impact our long-term health, and what are strategies to mitigate those effects?
Well, like I said, any emotion is going to be carried in our body. And so those uncomfortable ones like stress, I mean, if it's chronic, it's not going away, that's going to affect all areas of your health, like your cardiac health, your immune system. I think for me specifically, it's my respiratory, my breathing. Like if I'm just really stressed out, it's like, I just have not been breathing well. Or digestion, right? That's a big one. Digestion can be affected for it, but the best strategy that I can possibly offer, and one that I had to learn the hard way, is we've got to learn to listen to our body and learn just pausing to reflect on what our body is trying to tell us, especially the way it's carrying these emotions like stress. And so a way that we can like have a strategy to combat those long-term effects of stress is to listen and respond to what our body's asking us. Do we
Yeah.
need check-ins? Do we need to maybe go to the doctor for that thing that we have been ignoring? Do we need more water? Do we need to go to sleep more? Do we need to like eat more healthy food or exercise? What can I do to create a structure of more listening and responding to what my body needs to help mitigate some of those effects?
Yeah. And do you think that, because I feel like there's a fine line between anxiety and just stress, not knowing how to stress management, because personally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe it's a fad in today's society. It's, oh, I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with this. I struggle with that. Do you think it's more so to be a part of a group or to have somewhat quote unquote of an identity? So I identify with anxiety and I will just carry this a part of my nature and my name. Do you think that's something that at least this generation struggles with?
Yeah. And I guess that's where you can get into the realm of like, are we just being really nitpicky with the words that we use?
Mhm.
You know, because people, just because you have mood swings doesn't mean you're bipolar,
Yeah.
or just because you're sad doesn't mean you're depressed.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you can, just because you have difficulty paying attention doesn't mean you have ADHD.
Right.
And so I think some of the words that we use could still be true in a sense. Like, yeah, I'm dealing with anxiety. But I think the difference then would be, okay, are we diagnosed with a clinical anxiety? Because that would be different. So I think anxiety is a perfectly fine word to use to get the message across to our friends and family of like, I'm just really anxious right now, because that is a valid emotion.
Yeah.
The difference though could be like, if it's really intrusive, then you can go probably seek a medical or a mental health professional for the more intrusive anxiety versus the day-to-day anxieties that we all have.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, it does. It does. Absolutely. So would you encourage people or listeners who are quote unquote struggling with anxiety and they feel like the symptoms that you've listed pertains to them, in order to receive the proper health, they have to be clinically diagnosed with it, or can they just go through life and use the coping mechanisms that you'll probably list off later on?
I think a lot of that is really going to just depend on if you kind of have a good routine of self-care and structure set up in your life that serve you well, and you are still struggling with anxiety, then yeah, you might want to go see a mental health professional, because not only will they probably offer you tools that you've already heard of, maybe they'll offer you new ones that you haven't, but more than that, they're going to sit with you and give you that safe place to dive into where the anxiety came from. Maybe where are some of the beliefs and the thought processes that you have that can be addressed with that guidance of the professional. That's going to be probably where the mental health professional is going to help more, because I think we can all use normal stress management coping, whether you have a counselor or not. But that really digging into the past and really solidifying your exact structure of coping is going to be what the mental health professional is for.
Okay. And would you say, before we jump into the cognitive behavior therapy, would you say anxiety could be a part of someone's personality, maybe?
There's definitely temperaments that are different. Some people might be a little more reactive to change, or think, a little bit more fearful of the unknown. But I think anxiety is a very normal human experience. And a lot of that, it might just be more than temperament. It could also be just your past experiences too, because we don't necessarily need to get into this per se, but there's a difference between like having a stress response, having an anxiety response, and then maybe having like a traumatic response to something.
Interesting. And anything can trigger a traumatic response.
That will be really tied to like a specific traumatic event or a chronic traumatic event. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, then let's jump into cognitive behavior therapy. In your world, it's CBT. Right. So it is known for managing anxiety. Can you explain the basic what CBT is and how it can be applied in daily life?
Yes. So I guess the first part that's just super encouraging is that anxiety is totally manageable.
Okay.
It is. Um, and the goal, I think, of any therapy, but even CBT, is not to make you never feel stressed again or make you never have anxiety again. But it's what changes is how you cope with it.
Yep.
And so CBT is a great, very well known, well often used approach that we use in therapy. And the basic idea behind it, cognitive behavioral therapy, is looking at the cognitions, so the thoughts that are going on, and how those relate to the behaviors that we're doing. And the link there is going to be the emotions that we feel, like the way we think, and the things that we believe are very tied to how we feel. And a lot of the ways that we feel are very tied to how we act and how we respond and choose to cope.
Yeah.
And so it's CBT is like the catchphrase is like rewire your brain or retrain your brain. And it's really awesome and it's really, really effective because we look at the way we're thinking and try to find some distortions. Like I said, anxiety takes reality and twists it a little bit. So where in our thinking is it maybe a little distorted? Maybe we're catastrophizing something that we can lower the stakes about. Yeah. Maybe we're hyper focused on the negative and minimizing the positive. Yeah. But we should maybe have a more balanced view. Yeah. So I love cognitive behavioral therapy because it's not like, let's just only be positive, only ever be positive. That's so ineffective because now we're still twisting reality.
Exactly.
Right. Cognitive behavioral therapy is about what is true. Mm-hmm. What is true.
Yeah.
And in that there's, because anxiety is not just your thoughts, but it's also the way your body is carrying these emotions. CBT also has a lot of grounding, mindfulness, breathing techniques, progressive muscle relaxation. So there's that physical element too that we're pairing with how to combat these thought distortions, and just tackle it to where we still have the emotions, but we know how to cope and work through them rather than be consumed by them.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say a lot of our lifestyle choices affect how we CBT or how we manage anxiety and stress?
Absolutely. And I've had to learn this the hard way, but one of my favorite questions to wrestle with clients and myself is like, is what you're doing serving you well?
Right.
Are the structures in your life serving you well? Are the relationships in your life serving you well? Do we need to set up boundaries? Do we need to manage our time differently? Are we neglecting things that we truly value for the sake of people pleasing or perfectionism? Because if we're not living in alignment with our values, probably going to have more anxiety. Or if our needs aren't being met, if our days are structured and our lifestyle choices are not meeting our actual needs, we're going to have more anxiety. And so, I mean, the lifestyle choices can be as big as setting boundaries with people, saying no to big chunks of like activities or functions that don't serve you well, or the lifestyle choices that help can be as small as changing the way you put your silverware away. And I know that from personal experience. I just a small change in the way I organize my silverware helped with a lot of anxiety. It's crazy, but like even small structures as small as that or seemingly insignificant can really help. So is what you're doing serving you well?
Yeah.
Even down to silverware.
Yeah. Would you also say, because I feel like with anxiety, there's a lot of negative talk, self-inflicting thoughts and words. How do you, I guess I have a couple questions on that. How do you quit that type of negative talking?
So that would be, we would have to do some self-esteem building, which is interesting because it's not the self-esteem that we're trying to build, it's self-compassion.
Okay.
We want to, because how do I word this? if the more we grow in compassion toward ourselves, the more we're going to be kind and honor our experience rather than judging it.
Yeah.
And that will boost the self-esteem. If we're just trying to feel good about ourselves, it's going to be a lot harder to build that self-esteem.
Yeah.
So a really big part of working through anxiety is my two favorite C words is stay curious and stay compassionate toward ourselves.
Yeah.
Those are great things to use for other people too, to stay curious and be compassionate. That helps with conflict resolution and tons of other things. But as far as anxiety goes, being curious about why your body is acting in this way, being curious about why these things are stressing us out or why these things are lingering, and then being compassionate, normalizing the experience, being kind to ourselves, noticing it without judging. I think compassion building is going to be what helps with that negative self-talk and noticing if the negative self-talk is based off of truth or that reality that's twisted.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay. Would you say that there's a theme in clients that come in with anxiety and stress? They have a very common lifestyle,
People pleasing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's true for myself as well. The anxiety that can come from feeling like an imposter or wanting to please people, or just even things carried from childhood or things that happen at school with grades. It's huge, especially since I work with a lot of adolescents. Grades are a big cause of anxiety. And some of that is rooted in people pleasing, wanting to please their parents, please their teachers. And so once we realize that pleasing people is an ineffective, it's a chosen defense mechanism and that it's super not effective, we can start changing the way that we respond to expectations of others or perceived expectations of others. And that really helps with those symptoms of anxiety.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that's a big theme right now is just people pleasing, or perfectionism is another really, really big one.
Yeah.
All or nothing. Like if it's not perfect, then I'm a failure. Or if I don't get that A, I'm not going to get into college.
Yeah.
So really drastic, twisted, distorted thinking based off of perfectionism and people pleasing.
Okay. Wow. That's not what I expected you to say, but very interesting.
Yeah.
So are there any specific dietary and nutritional changes that can reduce anxiety and stress?
The one that probably I don't want to admit, but probably just caffeine, or just lots and lots of too much sugar, or, even sometimes those energy drinks, which they're getting more clean, by the way.
There's hope there.
Yeah, there's hope. But obviously probably alcohol is probably not going to be the most helpful thing to be consuming if you have anxiety, because that's going to enlarge those symptoms. But caffeine is good, but I think if you have too much of it, that's just the main one that comes to mind, mainly because everyone in the world loves coffee. But then also we all got a lot of anxiety going on too. And I think they might be a little more linked than what we hope or wish for.
Yeah. And there's caffeine in soda. There's caffeine in many other drinks too. So, spot on.
Yeah. But you're never going to go bad with more water, more vitamins, more veggies, some good meats. Yeah.
And my husband is a firm believer in vitamin D. It changes your mood and your attitude towards life as well. And
sunlight.
Sunlight. A lot for anxiety, depression, stress. It's easy, I feel like, to, seclude and get in a dark place. And we can try all these different things, but the Lord gave us sun, that light. And that light is not just for our physical body, but we've done several studies on this too, but also like our mental health, how it shifts how we think in life and our output. And interesting how the light brings light to our life and light to the way we speak and see things, and versus darkness, how darkness encloses us in and makes us, just in a rut and keeps us in that dark place.
Which reminds me of one of the biggest behavior categories of anxiety is avoidance, like
Okay.
avoiding people or avoiding triggers, right? And so that idea of like secluding yourself away, shutting the windows,
Yeah.
avoidance, that kind of ties in there. Whereas we want to be working through the things that we avoid. Why are we avoiding them?
Mm-hmm.
Where can we slowly step out of our comfort zone and expose ourselves to these triggers that maybe they're not as scary as what we think,
Yep.
or they're not as dangerous as what we think.
Yep.
Yeah, that ties in there.
Okay. So what are treatments options that are available? I know there's therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, but anything you can think of that you've found that is super effective with your clients, what are those?
Well, obviously, I'm a big like fan of coming to therapy, talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Exercise routine is very huge, but one of the more interesting things I'm finding that is helpful is something called neurofeedback.
Okay.
And so we have several local places here, but one in particular that I've referred a few of my clients to who see me in a therapy session, but also go to these neurofeedback appointments. And they're seeing like really almost like speed, um, like symptom relief.
Yeah.
And neurofeedback is like super non-invasive. They basically like map your brain. You
Okay.
kind of, I don't know how to explain it fully, but they kind of wear something on their head and it tracks the way that their brain is thinking, and you're watching a screen
Yeah.
and your brain kind of rewires itself. It's super non-invasive. You're like, it doesn't seem like you're doing any work, but your brain is doing all this work of just kind of rewiring itself by watching this screen.
Wow.
So it's calming, it's relaxing for people, and it is really effective. Of course, they over there will always say, "Hey, pair this with therapy," right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think that those are some interesting things that can go hand in hand:
Okay.
therapy and neurofeedback, and of course, medication, which I can't speak to fully because I'm not a psychiatrist,
Okay.
but there's definitely some medications that some of my clients have found to be really, really helpful. Some of them are having a little bit more difficult time finding that perfect dose and type of medication, but once some of them get it, it's really, really helpful.
So we're going to take a break in this episode to talk about today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Every Life. Every Life is a diaper company that my husband and I are excited to be a part of. And we love their vision, we love their mission, we love their convictions and their values because it is all rooted in faith. So they are passionate and compassionate to seek and serve those with great diapers and wipes. They are unwavering and unapologetic of their faith. The Bible is clear on the miraculous and innocent nature of every new life, and that's what they want to honor, and that's what they do with their diaper product, with their wipes line, and we're excited to be a part of this journey with them. My husband and I are expecting our first baby very, very soon, and we have this on our registry. We asked our friends and our family to join us and to partner with us and be a part of this journey in supporting companies who are in line with their faith or values and also the mission of Every Life. So if you want to partner with Every Life, if you want to be a part of this brand and support companies, Christian companies rooted in faith with a mission for life, with a mission that is against the anti-abortion movement, Every Life is that company for you. So use code VASHTI10, that is VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order.
Another big one is community. Community is so effective for helping any mental health problems because you can co-regulate with each other and find that normalcy and compassion from other people when you can't quite give it to yourself. And I think community is just a beautiful thing. God designed us for relationship with each other. And so it can be a really healing agent for anxiety and other mental health problems.
Okay. Alrighty. And what are your success stories? Because I'm sure for people who are struggling with anxiety and stress management, it's like, but is this really effective? Do you firsthand have examples of how this has helped people? And that's specifically related to anxiety and stress management.
Yes, I know that personally for my own life, I specifically had a really rough year, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was just riddled with anxiety. And I had to put all these like tools and techniques to practice, and
Yeah.
I was able to cope through it, and it was very effective. And I'm so thankful to be on the other side of that season. But just learning how to listen to your body and respond to it and notice, okay, my anxiety is lying to me right now. So I
Yeah.
don't need to respond and behave as if what my feelings are saying is true. It's just a game changer. And
Yeah.
so it's really exciting to hear clients come in and share the poor ways they coped and the healthy ways they coped, right?
Yeah.
When they're putting these tips and techniques into action. And again, the success story is not going to be, I don't have anxiety at all. I don't have stress. I don't feel sad. The
Yeah.
success is, hey, I got through finals week, and finals week is over, and I was able to work through it, and my body is regulated right now, and I feel great. And I'm on to the next thing. And so the success stories are going to be just like honoring and celebrating the positive coping that
Yeah.
clients do or that myself did, um, in those times that would in the past be really triggering
Yeah.
for anxiety symptoms.
And I like that you mentioned first that even though you're a professional in this field does not mean that you don't struggle with stress management and anxiety.
Yeah.
We all
We're
not
human.
we're human, exactly. We're all human, and we will to some degree struggle and battle these things from time to time. Even with pregnancy, I know one of the big things is post what's it called,
Postpartum anxiety,
anxiety and all
or
that.
depression.
Well, it happens, and it's because your hormones are, all over the place, and it's a new change and a crying baby, and you're not used to stuff like that. So it comes to people in different waves. But yeah, I appreciate that you mentioned that. I'm
Yeah.
sure it encourages listeners that you don't, just because you're in the field doesn't mean that you don't have
Mhm.
struggled with that. So, what are benefits to seeking professional just therapy counseling when dealing with anxiety and stress? Or can I just cope with it on my own and use the tools given? Is it necessary for professional help?
I think there's nothing wrong with going and sitting with a professional and saying the things out loud, putting it on the table,
Yeah.
so then you can like work through the things that you put on the table.
Yeah. Mhm.
The benefit of having the professional is a third party perspective that doesn't know the ins and outs of your life, which might be a good thing because they're coming and listening to your story with fresh eyes, with a non judgmental and empathetic, um, you know, approach.
Yeah.
And you might not get that fully from the people that are in your life. You'll get other great benefits from
Yeah.
working through anxiety with friends and family. There's
Mhm.
going to be some other benefits of that third party, a little bit more like of the scientific side of things that can help psychoeducate you about the anxiety, and then also help you wrestle through your story. And like I mentioned earlier, the onset of anxiety might be a good thing to work through with a counselor. When
Okay.
it started, how old were you? Maybe was there an event or something you need to work through interpersonally or intrapersonally with family or friends, or something that happened at school that might be really good to wrestle with a counselor,
Yeah.
rather than the people that might have done the harm.
Right. Absolutely. And speaking of family and friends, how can we on the outside help those who are struggling or coping, battling with stress and anxiety? I know for me, at least, growing up in a very conservative Christian home, it's read your Bible, it'll be okay, or pray and God will take it away. And that's not the approach. That's not the compassionate approach. That's not the merciful approach. So, how do Christians and non Christians who have family members, maybe it's a mom, a brother, a dad, who severely struggles with anxiety, have been clinically diagnosed, how do we, as a support system, actually support and help versus be harmful towards the individual that's trying to beat this?
Yeah. So The main thing that comes to mind is that compassion word that you said,
Okay.
because you can be compassionate towards someone and still not agree with the way they're thinking. You
Okay.
can be empathetic towards someone and validate how they're feeling without having to validate the thoughts that are feeding into that emotion.
Okay.
I think of like a child that is super anxious about grades because they think that the grades dictate their worth. And so we can validate the feeling.
Yeah.
And after we connect with them, then we can help correct. Hey, our grades are not defining our worth.
Yeah.
It's okay if you get a B or a C.
Yeah.
Let's find a stress management plan to work through the test coming up, or a way you can cope in the classroom when you're taking the test. But connecting with them first and validating, I know it's hard to feel this way, or it's really easy to connect our worth to these things. I know how that feels. So as a friend helping someone with anxiety, I think validating their emotions
Mm-hmm.
does not mean you have to validate the thoughts and beliefs behind it.
Okay.
And then co-regulating, just being a calm, consistent, available presence for someone, as long as they're not taking advantage of that, right? With boundaries. But co-regulation is just such a healing thing, and knowing that we're not alone in our humanity struggles.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned stress management plan. How do you create that? Do we have to go to a counselor to help us create that, or can we create that on our own?
I think you both, right?
Okay.
That question, what's serving us well?
Okay.
What structures in our life are serving us well? What would serve me better than what I'm choosing to do with my time now? Do I need to look at my screen time?
Yeah.
Do I need to reconnect with my spouse more? Do I need to go to set aside time more for prayer and meditation and Bible study?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to carve out workout time, change my sleeping, arrange my eating habits? Like, are the structures serving us well?
Yeah.
Where am I implementing self-care? Am I taking time for myself?
Right.
Am I pausing to listen to my body and hear what it's trying to tell me that it needs?
Yeah.
So those are all things that you can do on your own, certainly. And if you just need a little bit of help and accountability, go see a professional.
Yeah. And I feel like simple things, as at least some of my friends who have struggled with this, they had to change the music they were listening to.
Mm-hmm.
They had to change the movies they were watching, the books they were reading, because a lot of that,
Watching the news.
The news is a big one because it affects your mood, it affects your thoughts and all of that. So that's good stuff. So let's talk about what the Bible says about anxiety and stress management. Has the church failed us? Has Christianity, in the quote unquote, the name, failed us in terms of how we approach stress and anxiety?
The answer is probably yes. Right? Because it's very common to hear, I was told to pray this away, or I don't have enough faith. Why do I have diagnosed mental health problems, or just can't seem to cope with anything, even if it's not clinically diagnosed? What's wrong with me? Do I not have enough faith? The answer to that is no. Like, there might be some circumstances where you are doubting God.
Yeah.
But majority of the times, if you're an honest Christian seeking help for these things and you're just not getting the results that you want and the timing that you want, I don't think it is an indication that you have lack of faith.
Right.
I think it's an indication that we live in a fallen world, and in our weaknesses, that's when we turn to God, and we can challenge the way we're thinking, especially with faith-based coping. We rest in God's attributes, not in our attributes. Our limitedness can give us so much anxiety. The things that we don't know, things that we can't control, the things that we're unsure of, not knowing which path to take. Those things, our limitedness definitely strikes anxiety. But thank goodness we have hope of resting in someone's character that's so much bigger and better than ourselves. Someone so holy that we can rest that God is my provider. I don't have to worry. I probably will, but I don't have to. I can rest in his provision. I can rest in his deliverance.
Yeah.
I can rest in his mercy, his grace, his attentiveness to me. I can rest in the eternal reality that there's hope on the other side of eternity, even if you want to go big scale like that. But yeah, the church, Recently, at least in some of the circles that I've seen, they're doing a little bit of a better job of discussing mental health. But then again, some of them also are not, and still kind of doing the pray it all away approach, which is so ineffective and just it's borderline spiritual abuse, honestly. We can dig into that all day long, but we won't go there.
That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
So what does the Bible say about anxiety and stress? Does it even approach it at all? Speaks on it at all?
It does. And more so not necessarily just anxiety and stress, but just emotions in general. They don't scare God. They're littered throughout Scripture. We can read Psalms or stories, narratives, or even Paul's letters, and we can really feel the emotions that these people are feeling. We can even read about the emotions that Jesus, when he was in human form, was feeling. So emotions are not bad. They're not evil. They're a gift from God.
Absolutely.
However, we should be informed by them and not led by them. And so we should be led by the Spirit. So I think that the Bible, it doesn't diminish our human experiences, but it teaches us how to be led by the Spirit, how to rest in his character. Because we do live in a fallen world, and our emotions will deceive us sometimes, and our behaviors will be like poor coping, and maybe even harmful coping that we choose to do to ourselves or other people because of the anxiety that we experience. But we have a God who is so compassionate to us and who walked in our shoes and knows what it's like to be human and conquers that and offers us rest in him. And so my favorite thing about the character of God is that we can look at our life through two narratives, the stressful, terrible things, or we can look at it as life is hard, but look at how God has sustained me. Through the mountaintops and the valleys. Right? Scripture doesn't say, once you become a Christian, no more valleys of the shadow of death. Rather, it says, I know that you will be with me. You will be walking with me through the valley of the shadow of death. You'll sustain me. In you I find my rest. Even though there's arrows coming at me left and right, I'm safe in you, right? So the Bible has plenty to say about emotions in general, and but more so the character of God that we rest in is so much better and greater than the emotions that we have.
Absolutely. So I'm just curious, is there a difference between how your clients cope with anxiety and stress as a Christian versus non-Christian? Are those tools and those approach completely separate, or are they similar?
The tools and techniques are going to be very, very similar. I'm still going to offer learning to listen to your body. Being compassionate towards yourself. Looking at the distortions and trying to see what's true. It's just so much more helpful when we can filter in the character of God and the Word of God. Because now the compassion that we're having for ourselves is more enveloped in the compassion that the Lord has for us. The truth that we, try to combat the lies with is based off of our worldview as a Christian, why things are the way they are, what the hope comes from. Really the difference is going to be the hope aspect. People are going to still have anxiety whether you're a Christian or not, but you have a hope that is just anchoring you, that you can get through anything, because in the end, to live is Christ, to die is gain, right? That's going to be the main difference. The worldview, the Christian worldview, will anchor us so much more than a secular worldview. But I will gladly work with Christian or non-Christian to help address these anxieties. It's personally exciting when we can talk about the character of God too, not shoving God down their throat, but reminding them gently of who God is in light of their anxiety.
Wow. And that's your own mission field. Whenever you do get clients who aren't believers, that's the way you insert Jesus in Christianity. Very subtle, but like you said, you're not shoving it in their face, but at the same time, I'm sure in your speech and the verbiage that you use, it's very specific in showing that there's hope, and that hope can only be found in one person.
It's an eternal hope.
Yes. So to conclude this episode, can you recommend any books, any apps, any resources that, for listening can dig into, can buy, and start the healing process and mechanism and create that plan in order to reduce stress and reduce anxiety.
Yeah. A really helpful book is called The Happiness Trap.
Okay.
By someone named Russ Harris. It's really helpful. It's not necessarily written from a Christian perspective, but it's very helpful in addressing anxiety among other emotions too. So The Happiness Trap. There's also a book called Boundaries for Your Soul by Dr. Allison Cook. That's an excellent one too. But I kind of follow a few Instagram accounts that are helpful. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but sometimes Instagram accounts about mental health are not helpful. So I'll be very mindful. If you're actually gaining insight and learning about anxiety through them, then keep following them. Yeah. But if it's just like overgeneralizing the symptoms and making it seem like sensationalized, then maybe we should not follow those.
No. And if after this episode, if you can send me those Instagram profiles, I'll also include it in the description for the listeners as well. What would be one thing, if you can leave listeners today with just taking away one thing, what would you want them to walk away with?
It would be the concept of anxiety is not, we don't want to label it as good or bad. It's just uncomfortable. Okay. It's an uncomfortable experience, because if we label it as bad, then we're judging it, and that's not compassionate. It's just an uncomfortable experience. And just to be compassionate towards yourself, really. Be curious about where these emotions are being stored in your body, what they feel like, and just embrace the uncomfortableness and work through it, and know that the goal is not to get rid of anxiety. The goal is to change how we work through it. Changing that expectation is going to be so key in finding help. But that would be kind of my takeaway. Yeah.
And that's good. I think that helps listeners to also see that how they're feeling isn't bad. It's how they're approaching how they're feeling.
Emotions are a gift.
Yeah, it is.
But one thing I will add is the reason why we might do poor coping is because we think that the fears or emotions are dangerous. But they're not dangerous. They're just scary.
Yeah.
Emotions can't kill us.
Yeah.
The actions that we do could potentially harm us, but the emotions themselves are just scary. They're not actually dangerous. So we can work through them. We can embrace them. We can find solutions to move through these emotions, because they can't take us out. They're not dangerous. They're just scary.
Yeah. That's good. And something I thought about, and I know we're wrapping up here, is maybe as parents, all parents make mistakes, but as parents, we did injustice by whenever they, share, hey, I feel this way. Oh, you don't feel that way. Or, hey, blah, 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 just dismissing their emotions. And it's like, okay, well, why am I feeling like this? So they grow up to adults still having these
emotions or ignore them.
So before we wrap this up, one last question. How, as adults, do we reverse that thinking and the way we look at our emotions? Because growing up, we've always been dismissed by our parents or grandparents, whoever it may be.
Any emotion is valid. They are all valid. You are actually feeling an emotion. No one can tell you otherwise. You can validate every emotion. You do not have to validate the belief behind it. You do not have to validate the thought behind it. The emotions are valid, though. Yeah. And there can be something so comforting in knowing, okay, what I'm feeling is actually what I'm feeling, and I feel validated by that. And then you go the next step and calm your body down, get some distance from the emotion, and now we can look at what's behind it. Yeah. Now we can look at the thoughts and the beliefs that are feeding into that emotion and see how anxiety might have twisted the truth a little bit. But if you just dismiss, you're not feeling that way, stop feeling that way. Well, I'm not going to trust you to help me look at the thoughts and beliefs behind it, because you're dismissing my feelings. So I'm not going to listen to what you have to say about the thoughts and beliefs behind it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I greatly appreciate it, Jessica. And for carving out time in your day. I know you're probably super busy. You have clients that you have to meet with, but a fun episode, a necessary episode. And I feel like this is just the beginning of addressing these topics. I want to talk more about anxiety, stress management. I want to talk about depression, suicidal thoughts, and just all these different mental health issues that I feel like the church doesn't address. We over spiritualize things. And the matter of fact is, if we have pastors committing suicide and Christians and leaders, struggling with these things, dying with these things, it should be something that we should address and talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being bold to speak about this. And I hope this was helpful for your listeners, and keep going. You're doing awesome work.
Thank you so much. I hopefully will have you again as a guest sometime.
Yes.
Well, that's it for today's episode, y'all. I thank you so much for joining in. I hope this episode speaks life and truth to you. Share with a friend, like, comment, do all the things, and I will see y'all next week.